What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. And on today's episode, we'll cover a little bit of recap of Monday Night Raw, including the Judgment Day, Alpha Academy, my thoughts on Bron Breakker, as well as the ongoing storylines in NXT as we lead to NXT Battleground. So one of the big talking points coming out of Monday Night Raw last week was obviously the ending. That was Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan and the kiss that they shared at the conclusion of that episode, right after the steel cage match between Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch. A lot of people question what were the motives behind Liv Morgan, how would Rhea Ripley would react to this incident. And at the opening of this week's Monday Night Raw, we see Liv Morgan, she cuts a promo talking about how she wanted to take everything away from Rhea Ripley. Obviously, Dominik Mysterio would come out and address the situation, talking about how he doesn't want Liv Morgan to be the world champion, how there's nothing between them, and Liv Morgan hinting that obviously she wants everything, and that's including Dominik Mysterio. Dominik would claim that Rhea Ripley, when she returns, would kill Liv Morgan, but she said, yeah, but she would kill you too. And in the end, she would make it all worth it. And these advances that she's making towards Dominik, very interesting to note about the body language. I'm very big into noticing body language on people, because sometimes what we're not saying with our words necessarily our body and our reactions are telling that story. So seeing the way that she's approaching Dominik, very deliberate, I'm of the assumption that it's not necessarily an infatuation or a interest in Dominik. I think it's very clear that Liv Morgan's making her intentions clear. She's trying to manipulate the Judgment Day. She's trying to bring down the group that Rhea Ripley has really led these last couple of years. I know there was a time being that you could argue that Finn was the leader, that Damian Priest was the leader, and then there was a point where Rhea Ripley really seemed like she was the leader. But regardless, those three are the foundation that the Judgment Day were built on, with the exclusion of Edge, who was actually the original leader. But essentially, Liv Morgan is the one that injured Rhea Ripley. She took the world title, and she's now going after Dominik Mysterio. But in doing so, there's already cracks being formed between the Judgment Day. Of course, there's always like the Braun Strowman problem, the LWO. Now we have this with Liv Morgan. But if Liv Morgan can infiltrate the Judgment Day, or not necessarily join them, but just cause enough havoc, cause enough problems to when the time comes that Rhea Ripley returns, she has nothing to go to. Then Liv Morgan would have successfully, have her revenge tour and successfully outdone Rhea Ripley, which she promised, which she vowed months ago. The ongoing story with the Judgment Day too is very interesting, because you have multiple factors cutting into it. You see what they're doing with Carlito, who was drafted to Monday Night Raw after turning his back on the LWO. He's trying to seek services from the Judgment Day, almost like a protection services. And so he's been doing his thing in trying to earn favor with Damian Priest. It seems to me that Finn Balor, JD, they're more inclined, Dominik as well, they're more inclined to have him join and have him help out. There's always the thought process of the more the merrier. They have an extra hand, especially since Rhea Ripley is not available. But Damian Priest has always been very selective of who he allows in the Judgment Day. You saw how they were with JD originally. Obviously, there's the R-Truth story, and now with Carlito. And then for the most part, Carlito has been paying dividends, but we saw his matchup with Braun Strowman. Got soundly defeated by Braun Strowman. But you saw at the conclusion of that segment, they attacked him, that's Braun Strowman that is, with steel chairs, really laying him out and injuring his knee. With Damian Priest, there are these hints where he's not really in line with the Judgment Day. And what I mean by that is he kind of shows off these tendencies to be a babyface. You see his interaction with like a Drew McIntyre or Gunther, and the way the crowd reacts. And also, I don't know if people had seen this, but there was a video that was released on social media at the conclusion of Monday Night Raw. and the way he was interacting with the fan did not appear to be that of like a baby face, or excuse me, like a heel. It resembled more of a baby face. So I think what they're really doing is preparing the audience for this eventual Damian Priest babyface turn, and not necessarily maybe a Judgment Day breakup, but if anything, a revamped version of it. To see how they're going to come out of this storyline with Liv Morgan. I think this is going to be a big story point in the development of the future of the Judgment Day. We've had hints of a little dissension, with Finn Balor and Damian Priest in the past. Obviously, Rhea Ripley has been doing her own thing, but it's very curious to see how these players have influence over the direction of the Judgment Day. I look at the way that Damian Priest, especially since he's the world champion, how is he going to carry out? How is he going to develop as a character? Because over the course of time, as the world champion, you're going to have comers all over the place. You're going to have all these challengers, and I wouldn't be surprised if Finn Balor was one of them. I think that's definitely a story that could be told. I thought it would be told last summer when Finn Balor was facing Seth Rollins. There was a possibility that Finn Balor could win the world title. Damian Priest, as the as the Money in the Bank, could potentially cash in on him, where they would have these interactions where Finn Balor would even ask Damian Priest, like, hey, if when I become world champion, you wouldn't cash in on me, would you? And Damian, of course, no, I wouldn't. Never came to fruition. But it's those little hints, those subtle hints that we have to keep an eye on. And sometimes it's not as obvious. Sometimes it takes a time. Sometimes you have to progress through these storylines in order to develop and maintain the interest of an audience member. Look no further than what's going on with the Alpha Academy between Chad Gable, Sami Zayn, obviously the members of the Academy being Otis, Akira Tozawa, and Maxine Dupree. What I didn't expect was for this storyline to arguably be the best story going right now in WWE. It's really developed into an interesting tale of Stockholm Syndrome, of verbal, emotional abuse, dictatorship-like qualities that we've seen in Chad Gable. And it all stems from last fall when he was feuding with Gunther over the Intercontinental Championship. A lot of people thought that Chad Gable, myself included, would be the individual who would defeat Gunther for that Intercontinental title. He had multiple title opportunities, 3 that was in the fall, all of which he was unsuccessful. He could not capture the gold. And one of the long-lasting images of that series of matches was seeing his daughter cry in the very front row. And so that led Chad Gable, that motivated Chad Gable to reattempt in capturing the Intercontinental Championship. He would have multiple number 1 contender matches. He would even have a level of elevation on the card, as we now presented him as like this underdog story. And again, there were people out there who wanted to see him be the one to defeat Gunther. But over time, the WWE didn't give the audience that. They didn't allow Chad Gable to defeat Gunther at WrestleMania. Rather, it went to Sami Zayn. And over time, Chad Gable becomes more obsessed. He becomes fixated on that Intercontinental Championship, telling the members of his academy that we have to win back my Intercontinental Championship, a title that he never owned, a title he never held. But he goes out of his way to claim ownership, saying, my Intercontinental Championship. And gone are the days that it's the smiling and happy Chad Gable saying thank you to everything. It's gone. He's instead evolved into, like I said, this obsessive, this egomaniac that he has become, to the point where Otis, Maxine, and Tozawa no longer recognize the coach that they once had. He's now manipulating with his words, with his emotions, claiming Otis to be his number 1 guy, and then the next moment calling him dumb, stupid. And the segments that we've been seeing with Sami Zayn have been excellent. And what I like is when the WWE, or any story for that matter, rewards its audiences for long-term viewing. Sami Zayn makes comments like, if anybody were to understand what you guys are going through, it's me. In reference to his time in the bloodline, where he was a devoted member, a follower of the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. And over time, he was subjected to the same kind of verbal, emotional abuse, where he was manipulated. It was like almost a cult mentality where you thought you were the one at fault, where you weren't doing enough, because the head of the table would be the one encouraging these feelings. So for Sami Zayn to go out of his way and really encourage them to not listen to Chad Gable, but to listen to the audience, because that is what helps Sami Zayn get over. And you see the audience's reactions, especially towards Otis. Otis is over again. And the last time we saw Otis this over was during the pandemic in 2020, when he had that little Money in the Bank run following his storyline with Mandy Rose. And then again, that's another thing that they referenced, that Chad Gable on the Monday Night Raw segment. We'll talk about that real quick. Sami Zayn wants to call out Chad Gable. Chad Gable doesn't arrive. Instead, it's the members of the Alpha Academy who have like a written letter that they read to Sami Zayn. And in this letter, Chad Gable goes on to berate each member, calling Tozawa a loser, calling Otis a failure who couldn't even successfully retain that Money in the Bank contract he held 4 years ago. And of course, calling Maxine a Barbie that no one ever wanted. Like, these are serious, hurtful things that he's saying. And then these guys are forced to say these things. And Sami Zayn, again, why are you subjecting yourself to this abuse? Like, you don't have to go through with it. And as he's pleading with the Alpha Academy, out comes Chad Gable from behind and jumps Sami Zayn in the classic heel fashion, beats him down. And then Chad Gable immediately he yells at Maxine and Tozawa to get out of the ring. And he has Otis trying to attack Sami Zayn, but Sami Zayn, he won't do it. Otis turns his back, and Sami and Chad have this little brawl, which leads to them bumping into Otis, who knocks Tozawa and Maxine off the apron. And Otis, thinking it was Sami Zayn, attacks Sami Zayn, so we're back at square one. But there was a moment there where Otis stood up to Sami Zayn, and the crowd came out of it. Like, they popped. There was this loud reaction. They're ready for it. But the WWE is smart. They're going to hold off on that. They're going to want you to want it even more. You can't give them anything too early. You want to wait long enough to where it's needed, where the audience craves it. You don't do it just to do it. So I'm curious to see at what point do we see this finally turn of Otis. I think Tozawa and Maxine are ready, but they won't do it without Otis. Otis is the one that we're waiting for to do this babyface run. And the eventual match between Chad Gable and Otis, although I don't think it's going to be a 5-star classic, I do think it'll be very heavily based on story and emotion. And sometimes that's all you need. I'm not sure who comes out of the event, Clash at the Castle, as the Intercontinental Champion. I could see it go both ways, really, but I'll share my predictions on Friday's episode of the podcast. But the developments that we've seen with Alpha Academy and their ongoing story with Sami Zayn have been great. Like I said, I think genuinely it might be the best storyline that we have going on, just in terms of the investment, the evolution and the development of each character and what it means to each character. Everyone has stakes in this story. So to see how that's been going, the booking has been great. And in the speaking of booking, you look at the development of Bron Breakker, who joined the Raw roster through the draft. And I know questions were arising, like, why aren't they doing anything with Bron Breakker? But again, it's one of those things where you just give him enough time. You give him time to cook. And Bron Breakker was not included in the King of the Ring tournament, something that he was very upset about, and he took that out on Adam Pearce, saying, you didn't put me in the King of the Ring tournament. That was a mistake. And you've seen how he's treated the enhancement talent. You've seen how he's jumped Ricochet and Ilya Dragunov, and just the path of destruction that he's left in the wake of being left off of the King of the Ring tournament. And they really present him as this guy who listens to no authority. He does what he wants, when he wants, at the level of destruction that he pleases. And to see him become, again, like an obsessive athlete who just wants to do his best, who wants to be the best. And he was almost offended that he was subjected to these matches with enhancement talent. So when he finally got a matchup against Ricochet, he told Adam Pearce, I want to congratulate you for finally giving me quality competition. Bron Breakker had a great showing against Ricochet, I will say. There was obviously the one spot that everyone keeps talking about is when Ricochet is sitting on top of the top turnbuckle, and Bron Breakker, with a running start, leaps to the top rope and hits a beautiful Frankensteiner. Again, Bron Breakker is just a freak athlete. And since day one, and I know it's not a real hot take, it's probably a popular opinion, he's going to be a world champion. I don't know when, but he will be a world champion in the near future. Granted, there's a lot of storylines that they have to get to that, and there's a lot he needs to improve on, but Bron Breakker has the makings of being the next world champion, and I can't wait to see it. And quite frankly, I think he has one of the best spears in the WWE in general. You know, just the level of velocity, the speed, the strength. It looks like it's a genuine spear. There are some spears out there where you don't see enough power, you don't see enough speed on it, and you can't really buy it. Bron Breakker's look like he's breaking through you. It's great. And then obviously the beatdown of Ricochet at the end of their match. And Ilya Dragunov comes out, he makes the save, and now we have Ilya versus Bron Breakker made for next Monday night. That'll be a great showing. I don't expect it to have a decisive winner. I'm thinking maybe Bron Breakker has some kind of falling out with his own emotions. They get the best of him, or maybe interference from Ricochet. I don't know. But I don't see it ending cleanly. Especially with Ilya Dragunov, who just got drafted. I don't think they give him 2 losses in the span of a month. Especially with Clash at the Castle coming up. I want to see if they include Ilya on the card, being that it's in obviously Europe. Ilya being a European wrestler. Very interested to see how that card develops. But we know how they like to book their events with, 5 to 6 matches. We already have a few on there, so it's very limited in terms of what we can do on the rest of the card. But one of the aspects that a lot of people have been questioning is the debut or the return of Uncle Howdy. These QR codes have been popping up every episode of Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, some NXT, some PLEs. And in this last week, we had, sure enough, another QR code that led us to this instructional teaching video that really urged the audience that it was the time was coming, and also that there's time to repent. And they said how to prepare for the destruction that's on its way, that the massacre, what they called it. And they said that you can't ignore the signs. By the time we get to when this massacre occurs, this instructional video urged people, it told us, hey, we gave you enough time. We gave you enough time to prepare, and you didn't take us serious. It was very ominous. It was very threatening. It wasn't like the past QR codes or hints where it had this level of intrigue, almost like a horror movie presentation. No, this one was more threatening, menacing. It was giving you this idea that there was something coming. There was one clue where the audio was distorted, but it really sounded in reverse. So when you play the audio in reverse, it's just saying that there's a massacre coming. Run and hide. Run and hide. Multiple times it said that. And there's been speculation of when this is going to occur. On one of last week's QR codes, one of the hints led us to a line of sentences. Again, one of those ominous readings that it provides. But if you take the first letter of each sentence, and it would read out June 17th, the Monday Night Raw, after Clash at the Castle. Now, I'm of the mindset where sometimes it should be at a PLE, like a Clash at the Castle. We thought it was gonna be we thought it was gonna be King of the Ring, but it wasn't. So to have it the Monday after wouldn't be that bad of an idea either, and it would be enough time. By the time we get to June 17th, that'll be over 2.5 months since we started seeing these QR codes, since we started seeing these glitches on the broadcast. And speaking of glitches on the broadcast, there was also a point where in the hints, there was a picture of an advertisement for Raw Talk and saying, we'll see you soon. And for those who watched Raw Talk, I took the time out of my day because I wanted to see if there was anything huge in terms of development. At the beginning of Raw Talk, it was interrupting the signature at the beginning of the show with the whole "then, now, forever." And again, very similar to the instructional video that a massacre is coming, that it's time to repent. Very ominous, very menacing. So to see how we've gone from these early hints that were really nothing, that were just small clips of something outside, to now them fully acknowledging it on television. We saw Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, Wade Barrett, Corey Graves. They've openly acknowledged it now that it's going on. And when they do that, that means we're getting closer to the end. We're getting closer to the reveal of what is to come. Now, whether it's the Wyatt Six or not, if it's just Uncle Howdy, again, that's yet to be seen. I'm of the mindset where it's going to be the Wyatt Six. It has to be the group. They keep mentioning we. They keep saying we found them. He set us free. I think it's definitely going to be the Wyatt Six. I'm just curious to see who's going to be involved. I know there's been speculation like Eric Rowan, Nikki Cross, Dexter Lumis, Joe Gacy, Alexa Bliss potentially. Also Uncle Howdy, of course, would be his group. Then who would be their first feud? Because at this rate, I don't know. I can't guess. You look at a guy like LA Knight, who was the last guy Bray Wyatt had a feud with. He's currently wrapped up with Logan Paul. You look at Cody Rhodes, who's been a popular choice as well. He's wrapped up with AJ Styles. I don't know. Maybe Bobby Lashley, because that was the guy that Bray Wyatt was supposed to feud with at WrestleMania 39 before he had to take some time away due to his health. Very interesting developments that are being made. And obviously NXT taking place. We saw the NXT debut of Jordynne Grace as she would defeat Stevie Turner in the opening matchup in NXT. Just a quick showcase, to show the WWE audience this is who is coming. This is who Jordynne Grace is. And she wins in dominant fashion. And I still can't get over the fact that we have the TNA Knockouts champion on WWE television. And hearing just the name TNA, it's odd. I know I mentioned before we have seen it in the 2022 Royal Rumble when Mickie James came out as an entrant as the Knockouts champion. But to hear it regularly, like it's weird. It's exciting because now it's like, well, what kind of developments are we going to see in the future? Are we going to see NXT guys and girls jump over to TNA for a quick invasion, for a quick matchup? Are we going to continue to see more TNA stars come over to NXT? I don't know. Stay tuned. But there's been hints and reports that this isn't a one-time thing, that it might be a working relationship, and it really benefits TNA in that aspect because you're being able to showcase your talent on a larger audience, on a larger scheme of things. Because they're very limited on how they show TNA. I know it's on Access TV. They have the YouTube. They obviously have TNA Plus. But who has subscriptions to those? For those who don't, you have an opportunity to see the likes of a Jordynne Grace on NXT TV. So to see that, and also how they've been treating Ethan Page, who's come over from AEW and Ring of Honor, and treating him like a star. I like that they kind of used it as a kayfabe way to introduce him. He's a free agent. He doesn't have a contract. He came out to no theme music. He has all these lists of demands. And now that he has them met in his contract, it says his first match is going to be for the NXT Championship against Trick Williams at Battleground. Like I said, I'll be sharing my predictions on Friday's episode of the podcast. But now it's like, well, what main events this show? Because obviously the NXT Championship is an easy choice to be a main event match. But why couldn't it be Roxanne versus Jordynne Grace, right? I don't know. NXT has been on a roll as of late. Some people argue it's the best wrestling show every week, given the storylines. It has one of the deepest women's rosters, I will give that. And I'm very looking forward to the ladder match for the first ever NXT Women's North American Champion. I believe that'll be the opener of the show. Ladder matches, multi-person ladder matches, typically are the opening. So a lot to look forward to. A lot to look forward to on Battleground. Obviously, we'll cover more on the Friday episode of the J Area podcast. But I just want to thank you guys again for joining me on this episode, talking a quick session about wrestling, Monday Night Raw, NXT, and seeing how the world of wrestling turns. With that being said, of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. You can find me on all social media outlets at JustJose_3. Continue to follow and support the podcast, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube. Again, you guys have been doing great numbers on YouTube, increasing the follower, increasing the subscriber count, and I enjoy bringing you guys this content and talking about wrestling. The one thing that has always brought me back is being able to talk to you guys and share my thoughts on it. And please, feel free to share your guys' thoughts as well down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on the ongoing storylines? What are some of your predictions for Clash at the Castle or for Battleground? And with that being said, my name is Jose Ramos Jr., and we'll see you guys in the next episode.